We're going to part 3 of our natural selection notes. This is kind of like the main event. First 2 parts have been telling you a little bit about Darwin, things that led up to him, some of his travels, some of his things he's seen. This unit is what natural selection is. Okay, it's a great summary. This is the one video you certainly want to see to understand this whole concept. There'll be a part 4, but it kind of ties into this one. It kind of feeds off this one. So this is the main event of the evening. So let's talk about natural selection. When we left off, we talked about that Darwin was convinced, based on his travels, his research, his observations of all these different plants and animals, he was convinced that evolution occurred. Okay, so change did occur in all these different species that he saw, especially things like the finches. He said they came from a common ancestor, and the descendants somehow were changed based on most likely their environment. The only problem was he was convinced it occurred, but didn't know how it occurred. He had no real explanation for that. Nobody at that point had real explanation for it. Think about it. Less than 100 years before, people were saying things couldn't go extinct, and the way wildlife was in the world at that time had always been that way. So nobody had really been asking these questions, and Darwin started proposing this question, along with some other people. We'll meet one of them here in a little bit. He noticed one thing when he started looking into the how. He noticed that plants and animals that were raised by humans had certain variations in traits that had not been seen by those that were not raised by humans. And this had a term. It's called artificial selection. So artificial sometimes means like a fake or not naturally occurring, I guess is a better way to think about it, not really a fake. So artificial selection is when humans selectively choose what traits they want in organisms, and the way they get them is by breeding certain types. Think back to Gregor Mendel, who came after this, but this concept's been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years of humans artificially selecting between plants and animals. Gregor Mendel wanted to have purebred plants, right? He wanted purebred white and purebred purple flowered plants. So what did he do? He made sure he artificially selected the ones that he was going to crossbreed, breed with itself in those terms. We do this all the time. We've been doing it for thousands of years, and especially in things like livestock. We want to breed to have the biggest cow, right? We want to breed to have corn that has the most on the cob. Okay, we breed selectively. We artificially select these things, excuse me, in order to get the most benefit from them. 2 great examples of this artificial selection is different breeds of dogs. This is just a small chart that tells a little bit about, kind of gives a description of just a few dogs. Look how many different breeds of dogs we have, the sizes of them, the stature of them, the way that they look, what they're most likely bred for, right? Some of them are lap dogs that can sit on the lap and maybe were originally bred, artificially selected, to draw insects away from their owners. Some of them for hunting, right? That's why they're so large. They were able to take down large prey and large game. Some of them for speed, that they could hunt down things or possibly even race them. So breeds of dogs are artificially selected. Modern food crops, if you remember back to our film on GMO, the food evolution, they did a little quick run through of what natural, quote unquote, vegetables look like or fruits look like, and then how they look now. You saw that the original form was not nearly as appealing as the modern food crops that we have. Why? Artificial selection. And see, Darwin understood this. He got that. He understood it. And so he started carrying that idea over to what happened in nature. Now, here's a term that you need to know, not just artificial selection, but natural selection as well. In order for this to occur, the traits that we're looking to get must be heritable. Okay? And heritable means the ability of a trait to be passed down from one generation to the next. Some things are not heritable, right? Some things that traits that we have aren't necessarily heritable. Some of them are. As we learn more about genetics, we see that, a lot of things are things that we didn't originally understand. Somebody that's been a coal miner their entire life and they developed lung cancer because of their job, that susceptibility to lung cancer may not necessarily be heritable. It's because they put themselves in a situation, or they were put in a situation just by the lifestyle they had to live, to get that cancer, and they won't be able to just pass that down. But the things that we think about, stature, eye color, hair color, all these different things, they're normally heritable traits. And just here's some kind of ways to look at it. Pick these two pictures. This larger elephant obviously has a lot of heritable traits that it passed on to this baby elephant. We know that these tusks will start coming in later on in life, but check it out. Skin looks very similar. Color looks very similar. Even with these little ducks, there's some traits that are certainly seen. Some of the colored patterns and things like that. They have 2 wings, 2 legs, all that good stuff. Heritable traits. That's super important to understand. So Darwin reasoned if artificial selection works in getting certain traits to come out, there has to be another process similar to that in nature. Okay, and he coined this phrase, natural selection. And this is the process in which individuals, they have inherited beneficial adaptations, we've already seen that word before, that produce more offspring than do other individuals. Okay, so in other words, individual organisms that are best suited for their living conditions, so they have the good adaptations, will produce more offspring. And more likely than not, their offspring are going to look like them. Okay, they're going to look like them. The ones that aren't well adapted to their environment, they're probably not going to survive very long, and most likely not have as many offspring. And so as you look at a population, and we're going to look at several examples over the next few days, as you look at a population, if they're not well adapted, their percentage of the population starts to go down. They're more adapted, man, it's going to skyrocket. So Darwin and another scientist friend of his named Alfred Wallace, this is old Alfred Wallace here, they formulated 4 main principles of natural selection. So here are the 4 main principles of natural selection. And these are super important in understanding how natural selection works. One is variation. Okay, within a group, a species of certain type of organism, there is variation in the way they look, in their genetics. Okay, there's variation. There is a variety. There is a lot of different choices in that group. Okay, and heritable differences are the basis for natural selection. If every individual of a species is exactly the same in all of its genetic traits, there's not going to be any variation. And maybe they're going to keep living great and wonderful and awesome and spectacular, but what if something in their environment changes? Then all of a sudden, they're most likely going to die out. They're going to become extinct because there's no variation. Variation is good. Diversity within a species keeps it alive. Okay, it keeps it alive. We'll look at a few examples as we go. But anyway, variation is necessary for natural selection to occur. Look at these ladybugs here. Even though we think, oh, a ladybug looks just like the same as all the other ones, check out this variation that we see just in this small little group. Some of them have large black spots like these. Some of them have smaller black spots. Some of them don't have black spots at all. Some of them's got kind of both. There's yellow and black. Different shapes of the head, different shapes of the body, even a little bit width of the body. So there's variation, even though sometimes we don't necessarily pay attention to it. A second key factor or key aspect of natural selection is overproduction. And this is important. This is kind of going to get a little morbid, sorry y'all, but organisms have more offspring than can survive. They have more babies than are going to make it. We see this in the natural world very frequently. You see rabbits, let's say, they'll have a mess of rabbits when they have babies. And kind of the reason they do is because it's kind of a natural understanding that not all of them are going to make it. What this causes, though, however, is a competition for resources. Think about it like this. If you came to my house and I had a fridge full of food and it's just me and you hanging out, we can live for a good long while, right? We have plenty of food, plenty of drink. We'll have a good old time. We bring 10 other people over. We have 12 people in my house. We're going to go through that food a lot quicker. We bring 100 people over. Don't want 100 people in my house. 102 people sitting in my house. That food's not even going to last one meal. So this competition for resources, eventually we're going to have to start rushing to the fridge to see who can eat first, right? this overproduction results in that competition. It's actually a kind of a good thing. Yes, it's sad that not all these rabbits are going to live, or the runt of the litter when it comes to certain animal breeds and species are going to die off. But it's a good thing because it kind of serves as giving backup individuals in case some of the other ones don't make it. If they only had a few, babies here and there, and what happens if some of them die? What happens if, we only plant a few plants and there's a certain disease that gets, that side of the orchard, right? They're all dead. But if we planted some all over the orchard, some of them would make it. And hopefully we'd be able to put a stopgap in before the disease got to those other ones. Anyway, the third key aspect is adaptation. Some individuals have certain characteristics that allow them to better survive in those environments, okay? Adaptations on their own aren't necessarily negative or positive. We'll see this in a couple of things we look at later this weekend and next. What makes them positive or negative, a good thing or a bad thing, is how beneficial it is or isn't to that individual based on their environment. Check out this goat. This is kind of cool. If you're just glancing by, you probably didn't even see the goat. Camouflage is a classic example of adaptation. Okay, camouflaged individuals, kind of like this one, it kind of blends into its environment based on its coat color here, fur color. They tend to survive more. What if this is a dark black goat? Very easy to see, right? Very easy for certain predators to go pick it off because they see it, they can track it, they know exactly where it's going. So adaptation's crucial for natural selection. There's a term that comes, this is not the fourth aspect. Darwin developed this term called fitness. And when we think about fitness, we're like, oh yeah, he can run a mile, he's so fit. Or she can swim, laps and laps and laps. So fit. Fitness isn't like that. Fitness is a measure of the ability of an individual to survive and reproduce, okay, based on its adaptations or based on its genetics traits, okay? So it may have a high level of fitness, meaning that it's going to survive and it's going to have lots of offspring. Or it's got a low fitness level, meaning it may be super strong and super all this, but it doesn't matter because it's not able to survive and reproduce. Nothing to do with its strength, speed, anything like that. Check out the peppered moth right here. We'll look at this one a whole lot more. In this environment, a white and black tree here, this would have a higher level of fitness. It blends in, low level of fitness with this black one. And then we go to a different environment, they switch spots, right? Fairly easy to see and pick off, a little bit, harder to see. So higher fitness level. The last, press the wrong button. The last aspect of, or key component, I guess you could say, of natural selection is descent with modification. Descent means going down through generations. So over time, natural selection is going to result in species with adaptations that are good, that benefit their survival and reproduction in whatever environment they are. So this term, descent with modification, modifying, changing for the better over several generations. All right. So in other words, the ones with adaptations that aren't positive, that aren't good, they're going to die out. And they are going to have fewer offspring, and that generation is not going to have nearly as many that look like them or had the certain traits as them. But the ones with positive adaptations, the ones that helped them survive, they're going to be passing on those traits on and on and on down through generations to eventually it would most likely become the primary trait in whatever we're talking about. Okay, we're going to see all these. This is an explanation of Darwin's finches that you've already interacted with a little bit. How did it get all these different beaks? Well, according to whatever island it was on and whatever the food source was on that island, the ones with beaks adapted to getting whatever that food source is, lived, and they reproduced. The ones that didn't have a beak that fit that island's environment most likely died, or at least they reproduced a whole lot fewer descendants. Okay, there is a term that people love to use: survival of the fittest. This was coined by Darwin. With Alfred. A lot of people give him some credit too. Alfred Wallace. Survival of the fittest. It means the one with the highest fitness measurement is the one that's going to survive. Okay. Now you'll hear it used in improper contexts like social Darwinism, and you can look into that if you want to. But really, survival of the fittest simply means positive adaptations in environments are the ones that are going to survive and most importantly, reproduce.